If you've been paying attention to just about any source of media over the course of your lifetime, you have likely seen videos such as these, glaring examples of the damage being inflicted by climate change. But these simple visualizations often create more questions than answers. Most people are still unaware of what climate change actually is and how the actions of mankind are contributing to the demise of our planet. At its most basic definition, climate change simply refers to the warming of Earth, or an increase in our average global temperature. However, the term almost always refers to the changes in our climate that can be traced back to human activity. So, what are some of these human factors? Most prevalent is how mankind amplifies the greenhouse effect. But what is the greenhouse effect? When sunlight reaches Earth's surface, much of the energy is reflected as heat back up into our atmosphere. Rather than this heat going all the way into space, gases, such as carbon dioxide and methane, trap the heat and warm our planet by reflecting it back down to our surface. The greenhouse effect is an entirely natural process that has been occurring since the beginning of life on Earth. Those gases that I mentioned, typically referred to as greenhouse gases, are also completely natural. In fact, carbon dioxide is largely considered the most important chemical compound to life on Earth. It is absolutely crucial for the survival of all organisms. So, what's the issue with humans releasing carbon dioxide? We're releasing a natural chemical that contributes to a natural process. Well, to understand why the release of carbon dioxide has negative effects, you need a general understanding of the carbon cycle. Now, this looks complicated, but you really only need to focus on three things: photosynthesis, respiration, and the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, I've already kind of gone over carbon dioxide in our atmosphere and what it does, so on to respiration. When organisms such as animals or humans breathe out, they are releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This carbon dioxide is then taken in by plants and used in the process of photosynthesis. So, very heavily simplified, animals and humans release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and plants take it out. For millions of years, this cycle maintained the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and regulated global temperatures. This graphic displays that regulation in action. Natural fluctuations were always muted by this cycling of carbon dioxide until the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. As you can see, from that point on, humans have been releasing carbon dioxide at an unprecedented rate, overpowering the amount of carbon dioxide that can be consumed by plants. All this unconsumed carbon dioxide sits in our atmosphere, amplifies the greenhouse effect, and causes global temperatures to skyrocket. These quickly rising temperatures melt ice caps, raise sea levels, and decimate previously healthy ecosystems. Now, if you're thinking about sudden changes that cause environmental harm during the Industrial Revolution, factory production is probably the first thing that comes to mind. Now, this is a massive carbon dioxide producer, as the burning of fossil fuels in production is one of the lead producers of carbon emissions. But just about anybody could piece together that a factory puffing out smoke is bad for the environment. Someone that seems to fly under everybody's radar is this guy right here. When all those new factories were popping up, what accompanied them was a concept known as industrial farming. The small family owned farms of America became largely obsolete. Massive operations began to pump out meat, dairy, and cash crops at a scale that had never been seen before. These massive operations become the standard in farming, specifically with livestock. And today I would like to answer the question: how does the raising of livestock harm the environment, and what can be done to counter it? The wide-scale raising of livestock poses environmental issues for four main reasons. The first loops back to that carbon cycle I was talking about. Livestock production actually disrupts the carbon cycle by cutting the amount of carbon dioxide that can be processed by plants. This happens because of the utterly massive land requirements for livestock. Not only do the animals themselves need space to graze and live, they require acres upon acres of field space to grow the feed that they consume. This land use eliminates the possibility of biodiversity, as the land is entirely limited to the select few plants chosen by farmers or the grass and weeds of fields. A lack of diverse trees and vegetation causes less carbon to be processed than what would be without the presence of those farms. What also emerged when farms became industrialized was a massive increase in deforestation. When enormous plots of land are needed for farming, oftentimes the only option is to destroy or fragment natural forests. When these ecosystems are destroyed or unable to emerge in the first place, less carbon is processed, leaving more to sit in the atmosphere, actively warming Earth's climate. The second major way in which livestock farming threatens the environment again has to do with the greenhouse effect. Now, I've really only talked about carbon dioxide so far, but at the beginning of this video, I mentioned a second greenhouse gas, methane. Methane is very similar to carbon dioxide and has all of the same warming effects. However, methane is released during the digestive process of animals and humans. So again, you may be confused on what the issue with this natural process occurring is. Well, the issue comes from the extent to which farming amplifies this natural waste product. It is standard in the agricultural industry that farmers feed animals cheap food or food waste products that are so poor in quality their bodies cannot digest it properly. This causes the release of far more waste product than animals on a natural diet would release. When this additional release of methane is projected onto the scale that livestock farming has reached, the effects are devastating. Enteric digestion, or digestion done by animals, accounts for over a quarter of the world's methane release, and the improper management of agricultural manure accounts for an additional 9%. That means that roughly a third of the world's methane emissions can be traced back to livestock farming. However, methane is not the only harmful waste product of livestock. If not properly managed, manure can also pose an issue. When a large quantity of livestock is concentrated on a farm, and they are all defecating in that concentrated area, their manure creates a buildup of nutrients and bacteria. If not stored or removed properly, rainfall will wash away these manure byproducts into bodies of water near farm property. When these nutrients and bacteria reach water, they stimulate the growth of algae. This stimulated growth is known as an algal bloom. These algal blooms cover the surface of ponds or lakes and crowd out sunlight from reaching plants living on the floor of these bodies of water. When these plants can't get sunlight, they die off, leaving fish and other creatures with no food source. This can wipe out entire communities extremely quickly. A fourth way that livestock negatively affects the environment is through its immense water usage. Around 70% of all fresh water consumption comes from agriculture. Roughly half of that 70% is used for livestock. That means that about 35% of all fresh water on Earth is devoted to the maintenance of livestock. Consumable fresh water is a resource that is depleting across the world, and a huge reason for that is the agriculture industry. When humans inevitably reach a water shortage, natural sources will need to be depleted to keep up with our consumption. Reducing our dependence on livestock or changing industry practices to reach sustainability is a huge step in avoiding this fate. To minimize each environmental effect that I have described, a decreased societal dependence on livestock is the real key. But how is that brought? Well, making a personal effort towards a decrease in dependence is actually extremely simple. The first step, and the one that will ultimately make the largest difference, is to simply make an effort to consume less animal products. Although preferable, a full vegan or vegetarian diet is not needed. Simply choosing plant based options as frequently as possible is a great and easy way to make a difference. Avoiding or limiting all animal products is ideal, but there is one that truly should be cut out of your diet entirely: beef. Cows, specifically those raised to produce beef, are a clear leader in terms of damage. Cows raised to produce beef require the most land, consume the most water, and release the most greenhouse gas, and it's not close. Solely cutting beef out of your diet is a great first step in reducing livestock's impact on the environment. Being mindful of these effects and cutting out beef from your diet can have environmental benefits comparable to that of a full plant based diet. Now, the reason I keep referencing plant based diets and plant based options is because vegetarian or vegan diets are the absolute best way to limit your personal damage upon the environment. Although runoff and land usage can still be an issue, crops such as beans, nuts, and grains consume drastically less water, require less energy to grow, and ultimately emit a fraction of the greenhouse gas that meat does. There are multiple other ways that you can bring upon change on top of or instead of diet changes. These actions are easy and, although seemingly marginal, truly add up in a collective effort. A major change that you can make is to support more sustainable meat sources. A great way to ensure this sustainability is to buy meat directly from local farmers. This can be done by attending local markets or visiting local butcher shops and inquiring about the source of their meat. Buying meat directly from farmers eliminates the need for long-term refrigeration and freezing in shipping containers and storage. This reduction in energy use can make a big difference in the environmental damage done by livestock. On top of energy use for transportation and freezing, fresh meat does not need the plastic packaging that stores prepackaged meat products. Avoiding this plastic packaging is a great way to reduce personal contributions to landfill. Not to mention, you can support your local farmers while receiving a product that is likely fresher and higher in quality. Another way that you can limit the environmental footprint of livestock is by reducing your personal food waste. One third of all food purchased in the US is never even consumed. A large majority of this waste then ends up in landfills. Purchasing animal products and then failing to ever eat them amplifies the damage that is already done in the production of that product. It is also important to be mindful of the fact that every time you consume meat, you are consuming a product that stems from a life sacrificed to yours for your survival. Honor that sacrifice by consuming the animal products you purchase in full and letting none go to waste. If meat is an absolutely essential part of your diet, perhaps the easiest way you can reduce your consumption is by simply pairing your meat with filling plant-based foods. Reducing the size of your meat portions and partially substituting with a plant protein like beans or lentils can leave you full and satisfied without fully ridding meat from your diet. Now, all of these options, like reducing food waste and ethically sourcing meat, are great steps. However, I would really like to reiterate that a diet containing zero beef and a reduced consumption of all other meats is the absolute best way to make a difference. If everyone carried out some of these simple lifestyle changes, livestock's environmental damage could be limited, and we could all make a move towards a world of food safety and sustainability.